Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening. We from AP224 ALC 650. Today we are gonna discuss about the management issues regarding to a movie Shin Gojira. And first I will introduce myself, Muhammad Apek bin Abdullah. This is Mr. Ahmad, Mr. Kuwe, Miss Damia and Miss Mas. Our discussion today is relating to the organizational issues in Shin Gojira movie. So let us tell you a bit about this movie. It's about a creature or monster that suddenly came out from the sea at Tokyo Bay and creating a massive or major disruption to the city. Okay, next we move to our first management issues, which is hierarchy. As you can see in the movie, there is a gap between the senior and the junior. There is two scenes that shows us the hierarchy or the gap between the senior and juniors. This gap will lead to a miscommunication or lack of information supply from both sides, which is from the youngsters and the elders. In example, in the first scene, which in the Prime Minister room, the elders and the youngsters are separate between two sides, which is the youngsters sit other table and the elders or the ministers sit in different table and or the other side. So this shows that there are a limitation communication between the ministers and the youngsters or the juniors. So what about your points regarding to the issues?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. Okay, the point that out from hierarchy issue on this movie is issuing about to depends the information from the subordinate without knowing the true fact that has been received. For example, during at conference room, Yanagihara, which is the Minister of Transportation, he had received and read the information from subordinate without knowing the sources. It can see that senior executive was using their power in expecting the subordinates or junior to give information about the Shin Gojira. He must assure the information that he will announce is true and read it before they conclude on the issue. As a senior, he cannot expect that they will give 100% the true information. Yanagihara should ask them where is the sources that they found and evidence of the sources.
Okay, thank you, Miss Mia. I totally agree with your points regarding to the issues. So next, I will point out to Mr. Kuwe about his point of view.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Apek. In my point of view, hierarchy is the most crucial point in this movie. In the cabinet, they set a barrier for a huge gap between senior and junior. Can be clearly seen in the movie when they had a meeting in the Prime Minister room. Rondon Yaguchi, who is Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary, have told that there are something on a sea floor, but the cabinet do not trust him and told that there is no conclusive evidence. That creature must be maybe a big whale spouting. Other example that shown a huge gap between senior and junior in this movie is when one of Yaguchi senior warned him not to stir Tim up and know his position in the cabinet just as a junior. Thank you.
What a great information from Mr. Kuwe. Next, I will move to Miss Mas. So, Miss Mas, what you can say about these issues?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. What I can say is the organization management is weak because there has too many departments to handle by Prime Minister. They also did not have a strategy or planning in order to solve the problem. When the problem is encountered, they still did the meeting, but the meeting is not about to solve the problem. Besides that, they still keep the seniority and seniority. For example, Mr. Yaguchi said straight to the Prime Minister about the thing inside the ocean is alive. But after that, one of the cabinet member, which is his senior, gave him a warning not to give his opinions. When the monster appeared at the Tokyo, they didn't know which department to solve the problem.
Thank you, Miss Mas. What a great point of view. And the last one is Mr. Ahmad. I'm sure that he has a lot of to say.
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Apek. My point is the Prime Minister are too depending on their ministry. The Prime Minister cannot stand by his own feet. He take the all good and all bad advice by their ministry without think about it. After the Environment Ministry Deputy Chief, Wildlife Division, Hiromi Ogashira, who is the only woman in Nature Department, said that the creature have leg and probably can come on land with the strong evidence. But yet, the Prime Minister still trusts the Environment Minister. This shows that the senior are to control the information from junior that can cause trouble to Prime Minister to take an action.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad, for the great information or the great point. Okay, let's write it up. We'll move to the second issues, which is one-way communication. Okay, regarding to the issues, in the movie, we can see that the youngsters doesn't have the powers to point of view or speak out his point to the Prime Minister when they are discussing about the problem about the creature. And you, in example, you can see when the youngsters try to explain what is the reality that are happening, and suddenly his head of department stop him or warn him so that he doesn't speak or talk about the information that he want to talk about, because it seemed ridiculous to the head of department. So, Miss Mia, what you can say about these issues regarding to the one-way communication between the youngsters and the seniors?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. Okay. During at the conference room, we can see the lack cooperation between senior and junior in finding the issue. For example, as you can see in Japan's culture, there is a line between senior and junior where the senior and junior sit separately during the meeting because the junior did not get any chance in order to making decision or opinion in a way to identify the problem and find the solution. The junior only passes the information without having two-way communication with the senior. Then the senior just follow up the information based on the script.
Brilliant. What a good idea from a point of view from Miss Mia. And I will pass to Mr. Kuwe, and what can he say about these issues?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Apek. One-way communication is also one of the important point in this movie. We can see that women in this movie have been given a bad treatment by her cabinet, and it is shown that there are no such thing like gender inequality in this movie because women cannot enjoy the same right and opportunity across all sectors of society, including economic participation and decision making. According to the gender gap point, the junior and women have been treated unequally by the cabinet. All of their idea and precise information were rejected by the client. This shows that the information or idea from the woman in the cabinet just fly away because of the double standard minded of the senior. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuwe, for the great point of view. And Ms. Mas, what can you add regarding to the issues about the one-way communication?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. Like I said at hierarchy point, Mr. Yaguchi want to tell the Prime Minister about the creature is real, but the other minister object it, and the Prime Minister just listen to other minister. Again, at the conference room, he tell the Prime Minister about the creature because he see it at the footage online, but the Prime Minister did not want to hear. This is a one-way communication because he can't explain with more detail to the Prime Minister because the senior already give him a warning.
Thank you, Miss Mas. A tremendously idea. Okay, next we will pass to Mr. Ahmad.
Thank you, Mr. Apek. So my point is, in this movie, show that Mr. Yaguchi said to the Prime Minister that there is a creature in the seafloor that can cause the seawater boil. However, no one trusts him. Instead of, they said there is no such an unfamiliar creature. One of the ministers said it may be a volcano vent. This situation show that the Prime Minister only hear from their minister. Hence, Mr. Yaguchi advice clearly cannot be explained to the Prime Minister that make this communication is one-way communication.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. What a great point of view. Okay, next we'll move to the third issue, which is the personal behavior. Personal behavior means a lot to a person or affects the way he works or the way he coordinate with the others in an organization. In this movie, we can see the Prime Minister has a high level of ego in himself because it create an issues that makes we as viewers of the movie feel that the reason he being egoistic because he want to save himself. So somehow this is an selfish act that will lead to the management issues to solve the problem because he as the higher position need to lower his personal ego so that issues can be solved easily. So Damia, what can you say about the Prime Minister regarding to the issues about his personal behavior?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Apek. About this issue, Prime Minister is a lack confident in making decision. As a Prime Minister, he must know what will he do when a critical situation attack or happen towards his country. In example, the Prime Minister cannot make a decision, provide unreasonable decision and just waiting the other minister to give the information or decision. Okay, Seiji Okochi, which is the Prime Minister cannot determine which action must to take first, whether to call the civilians to go to the safety place or directly destroy the monster. Based on this point, we can see the Prime Minister is a complicated person when to make a decision during a critical situation.
Thank you, Miss Mia. I see that you have a great point of view regarding to the issues. So next, I will move to Mr. Kuwe. What can you say about his personal behavior regarding to the solve problem?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. In this movie, also shown a personal behavior or attitude. This can be clearly seen that all the people in the cabinet just think about themselves. In the scene when the Prime Minister had a meeting with the biologists, there are needed solutions provided by the biologists nor one of the biologists said that if he jumped into a rush judgment based on unverified evidence, he will lose his credibility as a biologist. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuwe. What a great point. So, Miss Mas, I believe that you have something to add on based on Mr. Kuwe points.
Thank you, Mr. Apek. I want to add that I think the Prime Minister is having a personal behaviour, which is he is lack of knowledge, lack of confidence level, doesn't have a leadership skill and not intelligent. Prime Minister can make a decision by himself, and he also too slow to make a decision. This is because he did not have a high confidence level to make his own decisions. For example, Prime Minister give a false statement to the citizen and give her statement based on minister opinion. He didn't have his own opinion to tell the citizen.
Thank you, Miss Mas. And the last one is Mr. Ahmad. So, Mr. Ahmad, what can you say about the credibility of the ministers in the movies?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. As I said before, the Prime Minister only hear from the Minister. In this movie, like I said before, the Environment Ministry Deputy Chief, Hiromi Ogashira, said that a creature can come on land with a really strong evidence. But the Environment Minister said to the Prime Minister to forgive on what she said, and he was like, please do not trust her. And he said there is no possible that the creature can come on land. The Prime Minister only take the advice from the Environment Minister without any doubt. The Prime Minister didn't listen what the junior said. It's a huge mistake for the Prime Minister. That's all for me.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. Okay, next we'll move to the last issues, which is the lack of credibility of the Prime Minister. So, what can we say about the Prime Minister himself? That he surely lack of credibility because he want to save himself by giving out false information regarding to the creature or the chaos or the problem that being appeared so suddenly. As a PM, he shouldn't act like this because he surely will lose his credibility as a Prime Minister. In example, the reason why he give out the false statement or false information in the television or to the media, because he want to calm down on and prevent chaos that will be happen or rise from his citizen. So we can see that lots of the ministers from every department seem doesn't know what to do and wasting time held by handling lots of meeting that doesn't have an outcome to solve the problem. They keep on talking nonsense and always jump to the conclusion, and that's why they end up deciding a wrong decision. So, Miss Damia, what can you say about the credibility of the Prime Minister?
As you can see, okay, thank you, Mr. Apek. Okay, as you can see in this movie, there are too many organizations, but I want to say that there is distrust issue in the organization. As a leader on the organization, Seiji Okochi should pick only one person to be trusted to make research and to give the actual fact information about the current situation. Based on this video, we can see the distrust issue when Seiji Okochi was distrust towards Hiromi Ogashira as a Minister of the Environment Deputy Chief Wildlife Division to give the information about the characteristic of the creature, so that the Prime Minister cannot find a way to solve the problem and make decision without giving any deep investigation, has led him to give a false statement to the citizens.
Thank you, Miss Miao. What a great point of view from you. And next, I will pass to Mr. Kuwe. So, Mr. Kuwe, what can you say about the credibility of the Prime Minister?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. The credibility of the Prime Minister in this movie have been doubted by the citizen because of his lack of leadership skill, and he can make his own decision. In this movie, in the meeting, we can see that a lot of information have been given to the Prime Minister about the creature and situation happened in his country. But the Prime Minister himself can make any decision and only ask other minister what to do. The Prime Minister also too much rely to others. When the Prime Minister held a conference, he give the misstatement to calm citizen, but it was only for a few moments because the creature just come on land. This have shown that although he is a Prime Minister, he have lack of credibility and lack of leadership skill, and he rely too much to other minister. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuwe. What a great point of view. Then I will move to Miss Mas. So, Miss Mas, what can you add about the credibility of the Prime Minister? What can you say about him?
Thank you, Mr. Apek. What I can say is Prime Minister himself have no credibility to choose educational cabinet minister, and he just believe what they tell him about the situation. Prime Minister also did not hear what Mr. Yaguchi tell him because he trust more to the other cabinet minister. Next is, this is for the biologists that tell the Prime Minister about information the monster. The biologists also have low credibility because they did not dig deeper research about the monster. They can't explain about the crisis and cannot give information about the monster to the Prime Minister without do the research. This is because they did not do the research more deeper before they tell the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Miss Mas. What an amazing point of view. And last one is Mr. Ahmad. I'm sure that you have something great to say, or something point that can you share to us about the credibility of the Prime Minister.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Apek. After watching Shin Gojira movie, we can see that Prime Minister has lack of credibility because he cannot make up his mind during the meeting. As a leader, he has to be fair by listening to others' opinion and make the right decision. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister gave a wrong statement during the press conference. The press conference has held in order to inform the citizen about the city's current issue. The Prime Minister told that there is no threat will happen to the country. If the Prime Minister tell the truth to the citizen, it will affect on his credibility because of his own action by not telling the truth about the city's current situation. He should investigate before making a statement. He just followed the script that provided during the press conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmad. So now we have come to the end of our discussion. So I want to conclude all of the issues that we are gathered from the movie. I can say that all of the issues can be overcome if there are tolerance between the ministers and their youngsters of every department, and I'm also sure that if they are listening to the newcomers or the youngsters, I'm sure that they will settle the problem. Thank you. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khairan. Then calling the biologists or the scientists from others university states or something like that. So thank you for listening to our discussion regarding to the movie Shin Gojira. Have a good day and thank you.